breaking news at this hour. A guilty verdict in Hunter Biden's federal gun trial in Wilmington, Delaware.
All 3 counts guilty as charged. Each of these counts required the jurors to take into account what Hunter's defense was here. But his lawyer presented evidence that he did not feel that he was actually abusing drugs at that time. Hunter Biden arrived in court just before the jury was brought in and read the verdict.
Judge may well go below that and give him a probationary sentence. Who knows?
Yeah.
Hunter Biden's arm case. Hunter Biden's recent conviction of 3 felony armed charges is poised to influence a major Second Amendment case set for Supreme Court deliberation. Hunter Biden's charges pertain to arm ownership while addicted to illegal drugs. The Supreme Court case addresses whether domestic abusers can be banned from owning arms. The outcomes are interconnected and could affect Biden's anticipated appeal. Hunter Biden's conviction marks a historic moment. It's the first instance of a sitting president's child being convicted of a crime during their father's term. The charges against him include lying on a federal form. He falsely stated he was not using and was not addicted to drugs when purchasing a revolver in 2018. Additionally, he was convicted of possessing the arm while struggling with crack cocaine addiction. This made his arm possession illegal under federal law. These convictions underscore legal consequences for lying on federal forms and highlight broader implications for arm control laws. The Supreme Court is soon to decide on a pivotal Second Amendment case. This case could reshape the landscape of arm control laws. It questions whether federal authorities can ban individuals convicted of domestic abuse from owning arms. Jacob Charles, a law professor specializing in the Second Amendment, suggests that the outcomes of these 2 cases are connected. The Supreme Court's ruling could potentially limit arm prohibitions to those deemed dangerous. This might create a legal pathway for Biden to challenge his conviction. One significant way these cases are linked is through their focus on who can be prohibited from owning arms. If the Supreme Court decides that only individuals who are demonstrably dangerous can be banned from arm ownership, this could open a door for Biden. His defense might argue that his addiction did not make him inherently dangerous. They could say it doesn't justify a permanent ban on his arm ownership. Such a precedent would make it easier for Biden to argue that his arm right should be restored. His conviction stemmed from a period of addiction rather than an ongoing threat of violence. The Supreme Court's decision in the domestic abuser case will likely clarify the scope of federal power to impose arm bans. If the ruling favors a narrow interpretation, restricting arm bans to individuals who pose a clear danger, it could significantly impact cases like Biden's. Conversely, a broader ruling upholding stringent restrictions could make it more challenging for Biden to overturn his conviction. It would affirm the federal government's authority to impose arm ownership restrictions on various categories of individuals, including those with past drug addictions. Hunter Biden's conviction on felony armed charges places him at the center of a broader legal and constitutional debate. The pending Supreme Court case regarding domestic abusers' arm ownership rights will likely set a significant precedent. This could potentially influence Biden's appeal prospects. If the court rules that arm prohibition should be limited to those who are dangerous, Biden might have a stronger case for overturning his conviction. However, if the court supports broader restrictions, his legal path becomes more difficult. This intersection of legal issues underscores the evolving nature of Second Amendment jurisprudence and its far-reaching implications.
Did you realize that Hunter had a drinking problem?
Addiction, especially, there's so much shame surrounding it.
It's a matter of, are we treating everyone the same?
He was struggling under a massive drug addiction.
Potential legal ramifications. A significant case currently before the Supreme Court, U.S. versus Rahimi, has the potential to profoundly impact Hunter Biden's recent conviction on 3 felony armed charges. Zaki Rahimi, along with armed rights groups, challenges a federal law prohibiting individuals under domestic violence restraining orders from owning arms, asserting it's unconstitutional on Second Amendment grounds. If the Supreme Court rules in favor of Rahimi, it could significantly bolster Biden's appeal against his conviction. Andrew Willinger, executive director of the Duke Center for Arms Law, believes a favorable ruling for Rahimi would provide Biden a lot of ammunition in his legal battle. This alignment with armed rights advocates seeks to overturn restrictive arm laws. Hunter Biden's conviction stems from a federal statute criminalizing arm ownership for unlawful drug users or addicts. His charges include false statements on a federal form about drug use during an arm purchase and possessing an arm while addicted to crack cocaine. His potential appeal questions the constitutionality of drug-related arm ownership prohibitions. Support for Biden's case from a favorable Supreme Court ruling in Rahimi traces back to the 2022 decision in New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin. A 6-3 conservative majority mandated armed regulations to be consistent with the nation's historical tradition. This landmark decision, authored by Justice Clarence Thomas, shapes challenges to arm control measures nationwide. A related challenge, U.S. v. Daniels, ruled by the 5th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals, contests the federal prohibition on arm ownership for drug addicts. Pending before the Supreme Court, its outcome may influence Biden's defense arguments. A Rahimi decision declaring the unconstitutionality of disarming those under domestic violence restraining orders could set a precedent. It might restrict who can be legally barred from owning arms, potentially including those with drug addictions. Such a ruling would limit arm ownership bans to individuals posing a demonstrable danger. These legal battles underscore a broader conflict over evolving Second Amendment interpretations versus federal arm control laws. Hunter Biden's case aligns with armed rights groups, jointly challenging restrictive arm laws and seeking a significant legal precedent.
You know, he was an addict. It was a sad situation. It was tragic. But he did have the opportunity to take accountability for this a year ago. And, the evidence, as the juror who was interviewed said, was, overwhelming. I think it is a crazy time because you have the president today on tighter gun controls. I think both juries got it right based on what they were told to do and the evidence that was before them, and keeping guns out of the hands of felons and people who don't deserve them. And his son's on trial.
Hunter Biden's legal strategy. The U.S. Supreme Court is set to address significant Second Amendment cases that could reshape armed possession laws. Central to this discussion is the case of Patrick Daniels Jr., whose legal battle might intersect with that of Hunter Biden. Both are challenging the constitutionality of prohibiting armed possessions for individuals who use controlled substances. Patrick Daniels Jr. was charged with a federal crime after DEA agents found marijuana cigarette butts, a loaded pistol, and a semi-auto rifle in his car during a 2022 traffic stop. Daniels admitted to using marijuana frequently, leading to his indictment under federal laws that prohibit drug users from possessing arms. His defense argues there is no historical precedent for disarming citizens based solely on their use of controlled substances. They challenge the constitutionality of such laws. Hunter Biden faces a similar federal charge, which he has attempted to dismiss by citing the Daniels case. His legal team argues that historical records do not support disarming individuals for using controlled substances. They are pushing for the dismissal of his charges on these grounds. District Judge Mary Ellen Norica denied Biden's request to dismiss the case, but the constitutional question remains relevant. Daniels' case is pending in a different circuit from Biden's, but the outcome in the Fifth Circuit could influence Biden's defense strategy. The Fifth Circuit's decision in Daniels' case could set a significant precedent regarding the Second Amendment's application to drug users. Both the Supreme Court can address Daniels' case directly. It must first decide on another crucial Second Amendment case, U.S. v. Rahimi. The Rahimi case involves Zaki Rahimi, who was implicated in multiple shootings between 2020 and 2021. Authorities found arms and ammunition at his home along with a restraining order against him. Rahimi's case examines the broader implications of arm restrictions, especially for individuals deemed dangerous by courts. During oral arguments, the Supreme Court justices appeared inclined to uphold the federal law restricting arm possession for such individuals. They might narrow its scope to apply only to those courts explicitly deemed dangerous. The Supreme Court's ruling in the Rahimi case, expected by the end of the month, will likely impact other pending Second Amendment cases, including Daniels and potentially Hunter Biden's. Once the decision is made, lower courts will likely need to reconsider their rulings based on the new precedent. Expert opinions. Benjamin Levin, a law professor at Washington University in St. Louis, suggests that Biden's defense might hinge on the breadth of the Supreme Court's decision on Rahimi. If the court delivers a broad interpretation of the Second Amendment, it could indicate that many current restrictions on arm possession, including those affecting individuals with legal troubles like controlled substance use, might be constitutionally questionable. Levin posits that a broad ruling in Rahimi could signal a judicial shift towards expansive Second Amendment rights. This shift could potentially undermine laws that disarm individuals based on various legal issues. It could significantly influence both Daniels and Biden's cases, pushing the courts to reconsider the constitutionality of arm restrictions on drug users and possibly other categories of individuals. That's all for this video, folks. See you next time.